Hello, my name is Aaron and I'm a law student at the University of Phoenix. I'm discussing a topic today on contracts and how things relate to the UCC and UCC Article 2. What I'm going to do is give you a summary of a case scenario as if I'm speaking to the CEO of a company. The situation that we're faced with today is a university has asked to get a hold of materials. They want a printing press. What they've done is they've contracted with a gentleman whose name is Bentley. Bentley works for GCI, which is Graphic Communications Incorporated. What he has done is he found a company named Armstrong, and they're going to manufacture and deliver the printing press. He's dealt with them before. He knows that they have a pretty good reputation, and he went ahead and used just a standard form contract that they have used in the past. And when he took the contract with him and took it over to Armstrong, the manager handwrote the phrase, "Acknowledged as a destination contract to be delivered and assembled in 3 installments to GCI over the month of May." And he wrote that in the delivery notification. So what we're going to do is we're going to address 7 different points and situations that can arise and have arisen with this contract. And the first point is that addition in writing even binding? You know, when changes are made, should a new contract be drawn up? Do we need to have a brand new contract, or can they be made? Well, according to Fullerton law, when a second party, a buyer or seller, sends in a return document which is definitely accepting or returning an agreement, the parties will have the contract even though the confirmation contains provisions adding or differing to the original. So basically, yes, it is binding as long as both parties agree on it. Understanding that both parties agree on it, we're wondering how that's done. Simply just initials or full signatures. Just as long as both parties have been noted to accept the revisions. Is it a good thing that there was history between these two? Because the contract that was given to the party given to Armstrong from Bentley was basically a form contract. It was one they had used in the past. Now the question is, did the history between both parties impact the analysis when it came to the addition? I can see where it may have impacted the expedition of the contract. I don't think he analyzed it enough, so it actually deterred from the analysis. So yes, it would have impacted it. It may have prevented both parties from having more details in their arrangement, and you have to make sure. Title goods are passed in the contract upon acceptance of delivery, and both sides are at risk of a loss because the press may not have been there by the deadline. Now, if this contract is valid and there were enough details in it, this would have been covered, but since there's not, the risk of loss still lies on the seller. Generally, the risk of loss stays with the seller until delivery, but it does become the seller's problem if the goods are damaged or stolen before the risk of loss transfers to the buyer. If the seller breaches a contract, however, the buyer has the right to reject the goods, and the risk of loss still remains with the seller. So basically, they are under a breach of contract if they don't meet the conditions and get the printing press there during the month of May as agreed upon. One of the other things you want to talk about is the statute of frauds. Sometimes a party to a contract would otherwise be invalid under the statute of frauds, nonetheless able to enforce it. What ended up happening with this is there's 3 pieces. 2 pieces were in perfect working order. The 3rd piece, the original shipment, was damaged due to a truck accident. So the piece was completely gone. Now, what the manufacturer did is they replaced the piece with a newer, more expensive piece and placed that at the door of the buyer. It was better, it cost them more, they lost a little money, but they thought it was the right thing to do. But do we know that this piece is still compatible? And if so, the statute of frauds would apply because there's partial performance if you can only use 2 of the 3 pieces, basically, in effect, the thing in and of itself isn't going to work. So you have to meet your contractual obligations or you're in violation of that. So when the part arrived, GCI should accept the newer part. And the reason they should is because they're making a reasonable accommodation. Although it's a material breach of a contract, or excuse me, a non-material breach of a contract, you still want to make sure that you make an effort to assume the replacement, especially if it's a better replacement. When GCI accept the part and they discover 2 weeks later, or a week later, excuse me, that the part was not compatible, it's still okay regardless of a week passing. That's a logical time span to identify this issue, and the interest is not yet passed to the buyer because they haven't even had a chance to use it. And according to the UCC, the goods must be in existence and they must be identified as a specific goods designated in the contract. Basically, if the UCC had not accepted the newer press, they could have claimed that this was a non-material breach, but they would have put themselves in an odd situation because what they would have ended up doing is they would have been able to say, we didn't allow you to make a substitution, we didn't allow you to fix the problem, and they would not have known that the part was incompatible, so the seller could have said, well, we tried to make this right, therefore we're not under contract anymore. So it's important that they did accept it. And then if they had not accepted it, they could have claimed that this was a non-material breach and they would have put themselves in that situation, and Armstrong could have stated that they were trying to fulfill their end of the contract. If it doesn't work, who's responsible? Well, if somebody signs for it, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're responsible for it. It has to be in good working order. There is a provision in coverage for that, and that's what we just stated when we talk about the goods must be identified as a specific goods designated in the contract. So if you refuse shipment, these are your things that you're risking a non-material breach. You can put the team at risk. Just to make sure, always have a detailed contract. Don't just rely on the history you've had with someone else. Make sure that you understand what you are getting. If you have something that's being sent to you, make sure that you know what you're accepting, and if you accept it and it doesn't work correctly, you still do not have ownership of that product or assignment of title until it does work properly under the UCC. Please see the attached references on the paper, and if you have any questions, feel free to email or comment me. Thanks. Bye.